Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome to Tuesday in the second week of Lent 2024. My name is Reverend Father Anthony Mario Ozele of the Catholic Diocese of Warri in Nigeria. Our liturgical readings for today are from the prophecy of Isaiah chapter 1, verse 10, and from verses 16 to 20, and Matthew's Gospel chapter 23 from verse 1 to verse 12. And our theme for reflection today is developing godlike attributes, not SODOMS. Godlike attributes, not SODOMS. You see, the prophet Isaiah begins his prophecies with a declaration of the sinfulness of the people of God. God charges his people with rebellion. God has adequately provided for his people, yet they rebelled against him. And now, because of their rebellion, the nation of Judah was experiencing judgment for rejecting the Lord. But in his grace, God has not allowed the nation to be consumed, just as Sodom and Gomorrah were consumed. Survivors remained. So verse 10 of chapter 1 of Isaiah's prophecy begins with a serious indictment. Notice that the hearers are addressed as rulers of Sodom, people of Gomorrah. Now that obviously got their attention. The prophet identified them as citizens of these twin sin cities of their day in Genesis chapters 18 and 19. You know, people in Sodom and Gomorrah at that time would probably have said, whatever happens in Sodom stays in Sodom. That would have been one of their advertising slogans for the cities. The rulers and people of Judah, however, have developed a Sodom-like offensiveness to the Lord by their rebellious lifestyle. So, what was it that these people were guilty of that made God to refer to them as rulers of Sodom and people of Gomorrah? Number one, they had compromised with sin. Like Lot in his day, the entire nation and its leaders have started compromising with sin and imitating the sins of the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. The second thing that they were guilty of was declining morality. Morality in those days had become so reduced that things that were condoned would have made their ancestors to cringe. If you look at our own society today, look back, say, 15, 20 years ago, you will notice that people were a lot more courteous. There was hardly any profanity and less sexually explicit images on television. But now, look at television today. Look at our movies today. How much society has changed. All around the world today, in so many once self-proclaimed Christian countries, the amount of evil, the amount of sexual permissiveness and promiscuity that is advertised on TV is growing by the day. Is it any wonder then that so many of our young people have become addicted to pornography? Friends, we are not just sitting at the gates of Sodom and Gomorrah like Lot. Sodom and Gomorrah has come to dwell in us. And then there is the corrupt leadership. It's very possible that the political leaders of the days of the prophet Isaiah would have been bribed by the rich, and justice was skewed in favor of the wealthy and the well-connected. Well, how about our days? How about our time? Our politicians are beholden to special interest groups. A lot of political discourse today, a lot of legislation is at the instance of those who would profit the most selfishly from it, not for the benefit of the people. African nations today are weighed down and burdened by the yoke that is their political class. In Nigeria today, politicians are not the solution. They are the problem of the country. They are the problem. How do you explain the size of government? The huge amounts of monies that are being thrown around by politicians who think that you solve the problem by just throwing money at it. And then in the days of the prophet Isaiah, what was good was now being considered as evil, and what was evil was being considered as good. And when this happens, whenever this happens, it shows that the nation is becoming very much like Sodom and Gomorrah. And that same thing is happening all around us today. The level of sexual immorality, the level of the lack of fear of God, these are things that are being condoned by society today. Sex sells. Sex sells. And my brothers and my sisters, when a nation grows so evil that sex is brazenly posted, advertised, and marketed, then it's a sign that the nation is becoming like Sodom and Gomorrah. And we all know what happened to those twin cities. My dear brothers and my sisters, our society today puts up with so much violence, so much filthy language, so much nudity that would make our grandparents to turn in their graves or even puke. It would make their stomachs sick. Today, many nations compromise with sin, and this has caused morality to slide downward. Corruption has entered the business, the political sphere, and even the church. These are clear signs that nations around the world are headed toward the same fate as Sodom and Gomorrah. My dear brothers and sisters, people who treat the poor as garbage, people who undermine the dignity of immigrants, people who undermine the rights and the privileges of the sick, of orphans and widows, cannot come to worship the God whose very character says that he pays attention to those folks. And anybody who thinks that some worship is better than no worship at all is proven wrong by passages such as the text of Isaiah for today. God would rather be ignored than praised by people whose very lives are at variance with his holiness and his goodness. So in conclusion, The prophet switches into the mode of a teacher, spelling out how God's people can reform themselves. He says, wash, clean up your act, cut out the evil, make a difference by doing good, work for justice, take care of the minorities, the sick, the elderly, the orphans, the widows, the immigrants, those children who go to school on an empty stomach. Tend to them. Then you'll start looking like the people of God that you are supposed to be. You see, biblical justice has to do with people. Biblical justice deals with people. And this season of Lent, that is what we are called to become. This is not an aggressive call to a legal matter. This is a compassionate call. This is a resolve to be better, to be people who care, people of hope. Learn to do good. As we continue down this season of Lent, my dear brothers and sisters, take time, seek out the poor in your neighborhood. Seek out the widows, the orphans, the less privileged. Reach out to them. Show them the compassionate face of the God in whose image and likeness you have been created. God's people must change their pursuit from worldly things to godly things. God's people need to correct oppression, bring justice to the fatherless, plead the cause of the poor, right the wrongs that we can, and do what God has called us to do. May God bless you as you share this message.